Hey, this is Steve for myothercareer.wordpress.com, and today I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about characters and creating them and how to move them into your screenplay. Um, I have had some problems in the past creating characters, or more specifically, moving the characters I've created into the screenplay. And I kind of wanted to talk about that in reference to chapters 5, 6, and 7 of the Screenwriter's Workbook and the exercises that Sid Field offers, new screenwriters to follow to kind of ease into it. The first time I followed some of his exercises was about 2 years ago or so, and they really helped me out to kind of attack and approach developing some characters a little bit, specifically with teaching me how to really concentrate and look at the dramatic need for each of the characters I was introducing. And for those who aren't aware, dramatic need is just the purpose of the character. For example, if you're writing a revenge script, the dramatic need is the hero to get revenge on the villain for killing his family. Or if it's a drama, maybe the dramatic need is for the main character, female, to repair a horrible torn relationship with her distant fathers. Things like that. The main overriding purpose of that character in the screenplay is their dramatic need, and that I had not been doing prior to that. Which it seems like a no-brainer, but if you don't know what you're doing, you've never had anybody kind of teach you how to write a screenplay. You might not figure that kind of stuff out, and I hadn't on my own. So it was really interesting. But the thing that I ran into problems with was when I was kind of developing a character biography. Now, a character biography is a useful tool because it can help you kind of discover your character a little bit more. When you're kind of coming together with your story outline, you've got a general concept of what you might want your character to be, but prior to writing, it's kind of important that you really get to know that character and you really kind of flesh them out a little bit so that you know how they would talk, maybe you know some of their friendships a little bit. And I was following along some of the exercises in the workbook, and I spent a lot of time um, writing a character biography. But what happened is when I came to actually writing the screenplay, I had developed these character biographies outside of the actual events I wanted to take part in the screenplay. Sure, I knew my key plot points and the basic structure of a couple of the acts in regard to what they were going to accomplish, but I didn't know the day-to-day scenes. I didn't know the smaller beats of the screenplay yet. And so what I was trying to do was take these characters that were pretty much standalone and then move them into this screenplay that I had structured without really making sure the two combine. And in effect, I had painted myself into a corner because I had these characters that would not react the way I would need them to in the screenplay. So what I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about before I wrap things up and throw some caution out there is just make sure when you're developing your characters that you don't put so much time and effort and development into them that you can't adapt and change them to meet the requirements of the major beats and the plot points in your screenplay. And Sid Field says it himself, you can't let any preconceived notions or ideas hamper you from taking another direction in the screenwriting process. And that is equally as applicable to structuring your story or your characters. And what I found myself doing now is I have a general concept I'll develop of a character. Then I'll plan out the screenplay. And while I'm doing that, I kind of flesh out the characters a little bit more. I don't spend a massive amount of time with character biographies anymore. Really what I concentrate on is coming up with relationships between the characters. I try to figure out history in regard to the relationships my main characters would have. Or if there's any specific event they need to react a certain way. Say, for example, they're given a choice and there's two clear choices and they choose one or the other. I kind of want to know what would make them choose that, especially if it's not the choice you would expect them to make. And so I'll go back and I'll try to think, well, what in their life would have caused them to do that? Was it a tragic event? Was it, are they not confident in themselves? What would have caused that? Maybe their parents were abusive with them, I would try to kind of figure out why they would make that choice. And the reason that's important, at least to me, as an inexperienced screenwriter, is that you'll hear this a lot from more experienced writers or books you read, your characters will actually start talking to you in the second act. They'll kind of start doing it themselves. And it's kind of hard to explain until it really happens for you. But when it does, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I find that kind of leaving it a little ambiguous and then stopping when I need to. Usually I'll do this before I'm writing because I put a lot of effort into my outlines, into my note cards and stuff, and my beat sheets. But I'll find that I do that a lot, and I'll stop and kind of flesh out a character a little more as I need to explain stuff, so that when I get in and write those scenes, I already know, and it just kind of happens organically. So it's important to know your screenplays before, or not your screenplays, to know your characters before you start writing them in the screenplay. But don't overdevelop them so much that you're left with characters that don't meet the requirements of your screenplay. In other words, they don't fit the characters you need them to anymore. And don't be scared to change and adapt them. Because the ultimate goal is they need to serve the purpose to move your story and your plot points along. And if you create characters that don't do that, you're wasting your time. Yeah, it's a good exercise, but you're making writing your screenplay more difficult. So don't be scared to kind of let go and change these characters around. And yeah, they may seem a little cliche, but if you're a professional, you don't need to worry about that. You know what you're doing. But part of the learning process is experimenting with this kind of stuff. And don't be scared to let go and change that character around so that they do what you need them to do. And not necessarily what they'll do based on the biography that you wrote. Because, like I said, for me, it caused a lot of problems when I first started trying to really spend a lot of time in depth writing these characters and creating them before writing the screenplay. And I wish I'd kind of figured some of this stuff out before. It would have helped some of my earlier stuff. But, that's part of the learning process. And it's part of why I'm not a professional. And if you're watching this video, you're probably not a professional either. So, I just wanted to throw that out there, kind of give my perspective on things. And if you have any comments, make it in the blog or reply to the YouTube video, whichever you want. I always enjoy talking to other writers, other aspiring screenwriters. I've got in contact with a lot of really, really cool people because of the blog, and I talk with them on Facebook, and it's interesting. It's good to kind of have a little community that you can bounce ideas off of and go to for constructive criticism. So I would encourage you to make a comment, if you've got any advice or you disagree or you've got an article you think might be useful. A lot of times people will drop stuff off in the comments, and I'll then make a post about it because I think it's important enough. They have something important enough that I want to share with everybody because it's good. So, hopefully this helped you out a little bit. But things will be kind of slow through the holidays. I think a lot of people will kind of be winding stuff down. I'll be tinkering with some stuff, and I'll post accordingly. But next week or so, we'll be a little slow, but I hope everybody has a good holiday, and if you don't have a good holiday, I hope you don't or if you're not religious and you don't participate in holidays, I hope you don't find everything too overwhelming and obnoxious and make through it just as sane as the rest of us, and have a good New Year. So thanks again. This is Steve from myothercareer.wordpress.com. Keep writing.